Howdy guys, welcome to this supplemental lecture to help you with your paper. So I am not mad that we didn't get to this stuff in class because we had great conversations, and to me that's what this class is about, is learning from each other and interacting from each other. But I wanted to make sure to hit a couple of these things as you are preparing for that pretty big paper. Remember, this is a pretty big chunk of your grade. So collecting your information. And just as a quick aside, how I vision this, and I don't think I explained this very clearly, is that as you complete your interviews, the reason why you have that Excel sheet is you will enter in each of your interviewees' information. So you'll start with question 1 and you'll go all the way across the row per interview. So you should have 10 rows down, and you should fill in all of the information across on that Excel sheet. So remember, I want the Excel sheet because I want your raw data, because I want to make sure that you got everything that you needed to, and I also want to actually put all this together in one giant Excel sheet and give it to you guys, because I think that you will be surprised with the information that we gather. So that's that first step. You do have that Word document that has the interview questions in case as you're interviewing you want to refer back to that. That would make that a little bit more easy, I think, for you guys. So just a little background on that paper, and so let's talk actual semantics. So we left off really kind of with this slide talking about different power bases that the influencer may utilize in order to get followers. And as we learned from Amelia, in order to get product, right? To build that content, to engage with companies, because if she had a certain power, and some of you guys picked that up, whether it was connection power or legitimate, because now she has the title and she's posting pictures with supermodels, right? Or an expert, or whatever it may be, she had a lot of different power bases and she utilized them in different ways. If you think about referent power with some of the stories that she told of those young girls DMing her about relationship advice and about health and beauty and about body image. And so that is because they trust and respect her, right? And they want that. And then she utilizes reward power by engaging with them. Anyways, I think this is just so interesting. So this is where we left off talking in class, but I want to apparently make this thing bing about talk here. Let's start here really with this idea of opinion leadership. So opinion leadership is something that if you've taken ALED 440, you have talked about. But what the literature says, especially in these influencer articles that I gave you, is that someone who can change followers' attitudes, opinions, or behaviors due to their competence or the influencer's knowledge, their personal traits. So there may be just something about those, if you think back to trait theory, right? Personal appeal, expertise, and connection. So that is what an influencer does. They are opinion leaders. So for those who haven't taken 440, or if it's been a hot minute, you remember, to be an opinion leader, you do not have to have an official title. In fact, most opinion leaders actually don't have a title. It's really interesting to look at this phenomenon, but they are really, I think, more influential than a lot of people who have titles. So we give that title of influencer out probably a little bit more than we should, but that's not really a legitimate leadership title, right? They're not the vice president of influencing, right? It's just that idea. Now, when you go back to that article, the one that was really long and kind of obnoxious, sorry kids, it's looking at that two-step model of influence. So go back and review that, right? This is, again, for 440, similar but not quite the same as Rogers, because it has these other ideas of its competence, its personal traits, its personal appeal, it's that expertise, it's the connection. It's actually more like social learning theory. So for those who have had 424, especially with me, you know I love me some social learning theory because that is how we are taught ethics within our own context. So that is how we learn leadership too within our own context. So the dude that is credited with social learning theory is a guy named Bandura. He's got some really great studies. Boy, you can absolutely fall down the rabbit hole when it comes to leadership in Bandura's work. He also talks about self-efficacy, which is pretty darn awesome. I digress. But he basically says you got to be credible, attractive, and reliable. And that's what brings people in. That's how you draw them in order to influence them. Now, Bandura is pretty clear that attractive doesn't mean like, woo woo, you're hot. Attractive means that idea of there's something about you that is just magnetic. So yes, are most influencers pretty? Yeah, kind of. Especially, when you think back to what Amelia talked about with the gender disparity. That's not the word. Gender differences between if you're a dude and you want to be an influencer, get on that train, right? And then when you make your first million, like, come and buy me lunch. So, but it's that idea of there's something about them that draws you there. So maybe they are a gamer, right? They may not be hot, but they are the expert and they have something about them. Maybe it's their tone of voice. Maybe it's how they play. Maybe it's how they live stream. Whatever it is, it absolutely brings you to them. So when you are going through your data, make sure you go back to that idea of opinion leadership, because I think you're going to find some really cool stuff in what your interviewees say. Now, again, that kind of crazy article. I love that it broke this down a little bit more. When we talk about opinion leaders, what are they? Right? So they said there's 4 different characteristics of influencers. So when you get your list of influencers from your interviewees, maybe a great tactic would be for you to say, okay, what do your interviewees identify as maybe that 1 or 2 characteristics of why they follow. So opinion leaders in this industry are considered innovative because they're trying out original, new, unusual products and services. Okay, and so this is starting on page 801 is where I am in this article. So influencers have a niche. And if you remember, Amelia said this, like, you got to have a thing. If you don't have a thing, then you've got to have a different strategy. But there are lines of influencers that they are an influencer because of a specialty. Remember, I told you about our former student that sold his Instagram handle to a corporation because at that time, and this was, holy buckets, y'all, maybe 10 years ago? No, not that long. At least like 6 or 7 years ago, he was the only game in town looking for, or when I say in town, like on Instagram, he had the biggest following of people who were looking for truck accessories and looking for ways to modify trucks. So he would post pictures of, different lift kits and different grill guards and different, after factory additions. And because he was original, that is why that corporation contacted him and said, we want your handle. And they paid out the nose for it. It's because of that originality. Okay, uniqueness is a little different, which is interesting. So original is you've got an idea, you've got a niche, you've got something that's new and cool. Uniqueness is within that niche, are you different? So does an individual consider themselves distinct from others? Is there something within that group that sets you apart, right? I wish I'd asked Amelia about this, of what she thinks her uniqueness is. She kind of hinted that she doesn't necessarily think that she's unique because she's one of about 1 million, like, beauty and health and wellness type people, but that's not really her niche. But it just kind of, she got folded up. So I don't know if she sees herself as unique. I don't know. Maybe we can talk about this later in class. Then quality. I about died when she talked about College Station being a content desert. And I know that there's not a lot going on in College Station. Like, I get that, especially for like 20-year-olds and early 30s. But I've never thought about this place as not having anything, right? But then again, she lives in Austin. If you've now looked at her pages, you know that, she's at Barton Creek all the time, and she's like doing yoga in the middle of some like cool thing with the Austin skyline in the background. And she's at Lake Austin or Lake Travis, and she's on a boat, and she's doing all these really great things. So I understand why she would consider this a desert in comparison to like a cool scene like Austin, where there's South by Southwest and stuff. But looking at this idea of quality, so if you are going to actually engage in this way, right? If you want some really quality, you don't just want to post junk, then you have to think of that. So the article, again, now this is on 802, the quality of online contributions is recognized as that important factor for conducting a user's reputation within their social circle, and in turn, getting more people to engage in their opinion leadership. And if you look through some of these citations that they use, like these are pretty heavy hitters when it comes to research and looking at that idea of Bandura's social learning theory. So the quality of shared content is a significant determinant that differentiates opinion leaders from non-leaders. Quality of content. And if you remember, was it Miranda Kerr? Is that the supermodel? I get her and Emily Ratajkowski, which is not how you say her last name. I get them confused. I think it was Miranda Kerr that was on her slide. But remember, she said that Miranda Kerr, or whoever ex-supermodel was, slid into her DMs and was like, hey, I love your content. Would you like to come to my party? Right? It's that quality of content that she has on there. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, then quantity. Now we absolutely know this too, right? Quality versus quantity. But opinion leaders are active users of social media. They vigorously engage in content sharing. They are sharing content at least a couple of times a day from what I have picked up, right? We did make Amelia's page her stories, which is exciting, right? So she let all of her followers know that she was talking to our class, which was very cool. But even since, I've just been kind of watching her Instagram for the last few days. Remember, she said she was in that wedding. She posted stuff about the wedding and the bride, and you could tell that it was stuff that the bride said, yeah, absolutely, go ahead and post this, right? But it was still, throughout the day, there were little posts all the way through. Her story told a story. It's very interesting. Now, why else do we follow? When we continue to go through, as I'm trying to find this page, I should have marked it. Well, Dad read it. Anyways, why else do we follow? It could be that idea of a parasocial relationship. So Amelia talked about this. We talked about this before Amelia came, that people just want to connect. And sometimes that connection is one-sided until someone, and usually it's the follower, makes that leap to actually engage with and want to have more than just a parasocial. This is where a lot of that idea of paying for extra content. So when we talk about the Patreons and the different ways to engage with influencers, you pay to ask a question and they read your question live and they answer you live on YouTube, like on a live stream. Or you pay to have extra content to access a part of their website or an app that helps you actually interact with them. So it could be that idea of maybe you're like me and you just dreamed that John Krasinski's your boyfriend and you would like to, engage in that way. But then people actually take that next step to make it more than just a parasocial relationship. Again, power basis, we just talked through that. Is it an idea of creativity? I think that is interesting too. Of a creative outlet, it may be that they do something you would love to do, but they do it in a really cool way. A couple of the other, I would say, Lacey's an influencer. We're going to have another influencer come into class later. She's a photographer, and she does, oh man, just her work is unreal, and she is so creative, and I love seeing her pictures. I know I can't be a photographer like that, but I love seeing her eye and her lens. And so I follow her, one, because she's a past student and I love her because she's a great human, but also because I love looking at her stuff. I mean, her photography is just gorgeous. So maybe it's that idea of they have a creative outlet that you appreciate and maybe is void in your life, right? That art. Innovation. So that goes back to some of the formalized that we just talked about. And just straight up, are they interesting? What is it about them? Is there just something about them? Maybe it's quirky, maybe it's how they present their information, maybe they are touching on your learning style, and that's why you follow them, right? Now, moving forward, looking at that paper, going back to that article from the Journal of Promotion Management to make those connections, right? Making those connections on the followership side with what Hannah and Caitlin presented, what that article says that I gave you with your information that you know about followership, all of those things. And as you are writing this paper, you're looking at your data, you're trying to come up with these themes. If you get stuck, let me know, right? I can take a look and I can give this other perspective that maybe you haven't seen. But you got to let me know before the day it's due. Because a lot of this does take a little time to process. That's why I gave you a little bit more time on the back end to do this paper, is because I want you guys to really see those themes and how it can impact what we truly believe as leaders and followers in this very weird world of social media. Okay, you guys are awesome. Thanks for allowing me to do this supplemental lecture. I didn't want to leave to go to my conference and leave you up high and dry or in a lurch. So thanks for being understanding, and I will see you soon. Let me know if you need anything.